Before the stadiums, before the championships, before Monster Jam even existed, before trucks had names like Gravedigger, Maximum Destruction, or El Toro Loco, there was one truck, one man, one vision that would change motorsports forever. Its name was Bigfoot. This is the story of the original monster truck, the truck that didn't just start the sport, it invented it. This is the story of how a simple Ford pickup truck and a man named Bob Chandler created a billion-dollar industry completely by accident. Our story begins in 1974 in St. Louis, Missouri. A young mechanic and off-road enthusiast named Bob Chandler had a problem. Actually, he had several problems. Bob loved four-wheel drive trucks. He loved modifying them, pushing them to their limits, taking them off-road where they weren't supposed to go. But here's the thing. In the mid-1970s, the 4x4 industry was tiny. Parts were hard to find, quality equipment was expensive, and most people thought lifted trucks were just silly. Bob didn't care what people thought. He bought a 1974 Ford F-250 pickup truck, a plain, ordinary blue work truck. Nothing special, just standard transportation. But Bob Chandler wasn't interested in standard. He started modifying it. Bigger tires, lifted suspension, improved four-wheel drive components. Every weekend, he'd test his modifications off-road, break something, then innovate a solution during the week. This wasn't just hobby wrenching, this was engineering. Bob was solving problems that the entire 4x4 industry struggled with. In 1975, Bob opened Midwest Four-Wheel Drive and Performance Center, a shop specializing in 4x4 modifications and parts. His personal truck, that modified blue F-250, became his rolling advertisement. Think about that for a second. Bob didn't set out to create monster trucks. He didn't plan to invent a new sport. He just wanted to sell 4x4 parts. He needed a truck that would turn heads, start conversations, and demonstrate what his shop could do. That truck was about to change the world. Bob continued modifying his F-250, making it taller, more aggressive, more extreme with each iteration. He'd drive it around town, park it at events, and use it to promote his business. People would stop and stare, kids would point, adults would ask questions, and Bob would smile and hand them a business card. But Bob had no idea that his rolling billboard was about to accidentally stumble into something much bigger than a 4x4 parts business. By 1979, Bob Chandler's Ford F-250 had undergone massive transformations. It now sat on 48-inch tires, absolutely huge for the time. The suspension was completely custom. The truck stood nearly 7 feet tall. People started calling it Bigfoot because of those enormous tires that left footprint-like tracks wherever it went. The name stuck. Bob painted Bigfoot on the side in big, bold letters. Suddenly, it wasn't just Bob's truck anymore. It had an identity. It had a brand. The truck appeared at off-road shows, 4x4 events, and promotional appearances. It was featured in four-wheel drive magazines. Automotive journalists wrote about this crazy truck from St. Louis that seemed to defy logic. In the late 1970s and early 1980s, Bigfoot pioneered innovations that seem obvious now, but were revolutionary then. Agricultural tires. Bob was one of the first to use massive farm equipment tires on a pickup truck. Planetary gear reduction hubs allowed the drivetrain to handle the stress of those huge tires. Custom suspension geometry, creating articulation that let the truck navigate obstacles. Roll cage integration, safety features that would later become industry standard. Every modification Bob made to Bigfoot was documented, photographed, and shared with the 4x4 community. Bob wasn't keeping secrets, he was building an industry. But here's what's important. In 1979, 1980, Bigfoot was still just a show truck. It appeared at exhibitions, it crawled over obstacles, people took pictures with it. Nobody, and I mean nobody, had ever thought about driving over cars with it. That idea came from somewhere completely unexpected, and when it happened, everything changed. April 21st, 1981. A field in the countryside outside St. Louis, Missouri. This is the moment. This is where monster trucks are born. Bob Chandler received a phone call from a small promoter organizing a car show and exhibition event. The promoter had an idea. "Bob, we've got some old junk cars we need to get rid of. Think Bigfoot could drive over them?" Bob thought about it. Bigfoot had climbed over rocks, logs, and steep obstacles. Cars, they were just obstacles with a different shape, right? He said yes. On the day of the event, a small crowd gathered, maybe a few hundred people, mostly families and car enthusiasts. There were some old, beat-up cars lined up in a row, junkers destined for the scrapyard. Bob fired up Bigfoot. That V8 engine roared to life. He positioned the truck at one end of the car line. The crowd watched, curious, but not knowing what to expect. This had never been done before. Nobody knew if it would even work. Bob pressed the throttle. Bigfoot rolled forward. The front tires made contact with the first car's hood. And then, crunch! The car's hood collapsed under those enormous tires. The roof buckled, windows shattered, metal twisted and screamed. Bigfoot's enormous tires crushed that car like a soda can. The crowd went absolutely insane. Bob immediately knew he'd stumbled onto something huge. The crowd's reaction was unlike anything he'd experienced. This wasn't just impressive, this was entertainment, this was showmanship, this was spectacle. Word spread fast. Local news stations picked up the story. Newspapers ran articles. "Giant truck crushes cars" became a headline. People who'd never heard of Bigfoot suddenly wanted to see it. Bob received more booking requests. Car dealerships wanted Bigfoot to crush old trade-ins at promotional events. County fairs wanted the spectacle. Corporate events started calling. Bigfoot had evolved from promotional vehicle to entertainment phenomenon. And Bob Chandler, he'd just invented an entire sport. After that first car crush in 1981, everything moved at lightning speed. Bob Chandler and Bigfoot 4x4 were suddenly in demand. But Bob quickly realized that crushing cars, while spectacular, needed to evolve into something more, something competitive, something that could fill stadiums instead of just parking lots. In 1982, another modified truck appeared, USA 1, owned by Everett Jasmer. Then came Barefoot, owned by Fred Schaefer. These pioneers saw what Bigfoot had started and wanted in on the action. But here's what's crucial. Bob Chandler didn't try to monopolize monster trucks. Instead, he welcomed the competition. He shared knowledge. He helped other teams. He understood that for monster trucks to become a legitimate sport, there needed to be multiple trucks, multiple teams, multiple stars. This is the mark of a true pioneer, building an industry, not just a brand. In 1983, the first ever organized monster truck race took place, Bigfoot versus USA 1, side by side, dragging through mud pits, over dirt mounds, crushing cars competitively. The format was rough, unofficial, but it worked. Fans loved it. Throughout the mid-1980s, monster truck events exploded in popularity. What started with a few hundred people in a field grew to thousands in stadiums. Television networks started broadcasting events. ESPN picked up coverage. Suddenly, monster trucks were mainstream entertainment. By 1985, there were over a dozen professional monster trucks touring the United States. By 1988, there were 30. The sport Bob accidentally created was now a multi-million-dollar industry. And through it all, Bigfoot remained at the center, the original, the standard by which all others were measured. But Bob wasn't content to rest on his laurels. While other teams copied what Bigfoot had already done, Bob was always looking ahead, always innovating, always pushing boundaries. Bigfoot pioneered the four-link suspension system that became industry standard. Bigfoot experimented with different chassis designs. Bigfoot tested new safety features. Bigfoot pushed tire manufacturers to develop better products. Whatever Bigfoot did one year, the entire industry adopted the next. This wasn't just a media appearances. Bigfoot has appeared in hundreds of television shows and commercials, multiple movies and documentaries, video games from early arcade games to modern titles, countless magazines, newspapers, and publications worldwide, music videos and entertainment programs. Economic impact. The monster truck industry that Bigfoot created generates hundreds of millions in annual revenue, thousands of jobs worldwide, entire manufacturing industries, special tires, parts, chassis builders, tourism to events in every major city. Think about that. One man, one truck, one idea created an entire economy. Bob Chandler didn't just build a successful vehicle, he built a legacy that employs thousands, entertains millions, and has become part of American popular culture. Bigfoot transcended being just a vehicle. It became a cultural icon that defined the 1980s and 90s just as much as MTV, video games, and Saturday morning cartoons. Toy and merchandise empire. In the 1980s, Bigfoot toys were everywhere. Die-cast models, remote-controlled trucks, puzzles, posters, lunchboxes, t-shirts. If it could have a Bigfoot logo, it did. An entire generation of kids grew up with Bigfoot toys. Many of today's professional monster truck drivers trace their love of the sport back to playing with a Bigfoot toy in their childhood. Media sensation. Bigfoot appeared on talk shows, morning news programs, and prime-time television specials. Bob Chandler became a celebrity, recognized wherever he went. The truck was featured in the 1986 film Take This Job and Shove It. Countless commercials for everything from batteries to tools, music videos for major artists, television series including documentaries and reality shows. Video games. Bigfoot was featured in multiple video games, introducing the truck to global audiences who might never attend a live event. From arcade games in the 1980s to modern console and mobile games, Bigfoot remains playable digital entertainment. International reach. While monster trucks started in America, Bigfoot has toured internationally. Europe, Australia, Asia, South America. The Bigfoot brand is recognized worldwide. Bob Chandler's innovation became a global phenomenon. Inspiration for an industry. Without Bigfoot, there is no Monster Jam, no Gravedigger, no modern Monster Truck Championship Series, no specialized monster truck parts industry, no monster truck video games, no stadium-scale monster truck events. Everything in monster trucks exists because Bob Chandler had a vision and the courage to pursue it. The Bigfoot 4x4 Museum. Located in Pacific, Missouri, the Bigfoot facility houses multiple historic Bigfoot trucks on display, memorabilia spanning 5 decades, the original shop where it all started, opportunities for fans to meet the legend himself, Thousands of fans make pilgrimages to this facility every year. It's like visiting the birthplace of monster truck history. Education and inspiration. Bob Chandler has inspired countless people to pursue their passions despite skeptics, turn hobbies into careers, innovate rather than imitate, build industries, not just businesses. The Bigfoot story isn't just about trucks, it's about vision. It's about seeing possibilities where others see problems. It's about having the courage to try something completely new, even when nobody understands it yet. Bob Chandler took an ordinary pickup truck and transformed it into an extraordinary legacy that will last forever. Chapter 9: Bigfoot versus Gravedigger, the eternal debate. And now, we address the elephant, or should I say the monster, in the room. Bigfoot versus Gravedigger, the eternal debate. Monster truck fans have argued this for decades. Which truck is better? Which is more popular? Which is the true king of monster trucks? Let's break this down objectively. Historical significance. There is no debate here. Bigfoot came first. Bigfoot invented monster trucks. Without Bigfoot, there is no Gravedigger. There is no Monster Jam. There is no sport. Bigfoot is the original. That can never be disputed. Gravedigger debuted in 1982, a year after Bigfoot's first car crush. Dennis Anderson himself acknowledged being inspired by what Bigfoot had created. Innovation. Bigfoot pioneered nearly every major innovation in monster truck history. Agricultural tires, four-link suspension, nitrogen shocks, safety features, the entire concept of car crushing. Gravedigger refined and perfected many of these innovations, but Bigfoot invented them. Current popularity. This is where the debate gets interesting. In the 1980s and early 1990s, Bigfoot was the undisputed king, the most popular, the most recognized, the biggest merchandise seller. But in the late 1990s and 2000s, something shifted. Gravedigger's aggressive driving style, iconic paint scheme, and the charismatic Anderson family connected with audiences in a powerful way. When Monster Jam, owned by Feld Entertainment, became the dominant monster truck organization, and when Feld purchased the Gravedigger team in 1998, Gravedigger became Monster Jam's flagship truck. Today, at Monster Jam events, which are the most widely attended monster truck shows in the world, Gravedigger is prominently featured and extremely popular. Bigfoot, while still competing and still beloved, isn't essential to the modern monster truck experience. Merchandising. Both trucks have generated millions in merchandise sales. Both have toy lines, video game appearances, and licensing deals. This category is essentially a tie. Media presence. Bigfoot dominated the 1980s and 1990s media landscape. Gravedigger dominates the 2000s to 2020s digital and social media era. The verdict. Here's the truth. This debate is like arguing whether the Beatles or the Rolling Stones are better. Both answers are correct depending on your perspective. Bigfoot is the pioneer, the inventor, the foundation upon which everything else is built. Without Bigfoot, there is no monster truck industry. Gravedigger is the evolver, the truck that took the concept Bigfoot created and elevated it to new heights of popularity and cultural penetration in the modern era. Instead of fighting about which truck is better, we should celebrate both. Bob Chandler and Dennis Anderson both contributed immensely to a sport that brings joy to millions. Bigfoot opened the door. Gravedigger walked through it and built a mansion on the other side. Both deserve respect. Both deserve recognition. Both are legendary. But let's be clear about one thing. Bigfoot is the original, the first, the inventor, and that status is eternal and undisputed. Bob Chandler is the godfather of monster trucks. Everyone else, including the great Dennis Anderson, is part of the family that Bob created. In 1974, Bob Chandler bought an ordinary Ford pickup truck. He had no master plan, no grand vision of creating a sport, no idea that his rolling advertisement would change motorsports forever. He just wanted to sell some 4x4 parts. But through innovation, persistence, and a willingness to try something no one had ever done before, Bob Chandler created Bigfoot. And in creating Bigfoot, he created an entire industry. Nearly 50 years later, Bigfoot remains an icon, the original, the pioneer, the standard by which all monster trucks are measured. 21 Bigfoot trucks have been built. Millions of fans have watched them perform. Countless innovations have been pioneered. Entire careers have been built around the industry Bob created. But beyond the trucks, beyond the records, beyond the fame, Bigfoot represents something bigger. It represents the American dream, the idea that one person with vision, determination, and courage can create something from nothing, can turn a hobby into a career, can build an empire from spare parts and determination. Bob Chandler didn't just build a truck, he built a legacy that will outlive us all, a name that will be remembered as long as monster trucks exist. And as long as there are stadiums, crowds, crushed cars, and enormous tires, there will be Bigfoot, the original, the pioneer.